Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. So before I get into all of my year-end videos, I wanted to do my December wrap-up. It is only the 28th today, so I do have a few more days to finish a book, but I just don't see that happening. It's possible that I might finish the last book in the Brutal Birthright series, but I don't foresee it being anything special, anything above a 3-star, so yeah. The first book that I read for the month is We Hunt the Flame. This was a reread for me in an attempt to read the duet. As the first time went reading this book, I gave this 3 stars. This is about Nasir and Zafira, and this is like a Middle Eastern inspired fantasy series. The female main character, Zafira, is seemingly a powerless girl, and in the beginning of the book there is this dark forest that is encroaching on her village, and it's getting closer and closer every year, and they know eventually it will crush their village and kill all of them. So she gets approached by this random woman who says that she could go to this abandoned and cursed island to retrieve this magical book that will bring magic back to their world, and they will eliminate this dark forest that is going to take over everything eventually. And to counteract that, we have Nasir, who is the crowned prince kingdoms, and his father sends him out to kill Zafira, or the hunter as she is known in all of the kingdoms, and retrieve the book and bring it back to him. And so that starts the fantasy series, and it starts the romance between them. I did end up reading and DNFing the second one in this month. I think the main issue is that the world is never explained or expounded upon. You never really have a full understanding of the magic system, what the book can do, what everybody else can do. Nothing is really explained to you, and it's all very confusing and just feels very lackluster because it feels like nothing was explored in any way. So then I read There Is No Devil by Sophie Lark. This is the second book in the Sinners duet. Obviously, I can't go into a lot of detail because it is the second book, but I ended up giving this 5 stars. This duet is about Mara and Cole, and in the first one, Cole has a artist slash serial killing rival, and this rival decides to make Cole lose control by taking Mara and leaving Mara as a present, and it goes from there. Cole quickly becomes obsessed. This is a fantastic duet. I have seen complaints about this one, the second one, being a little bit slower, more about them as characters, which I personally had no problem with. I gave both the first one and the second one 5 stars. So next up was probably one of my most disappointing reads of the year, and that is the Stopover. I gave this 2 stars. So this is about Emily and Jamie, and in the beginning of the book they are on the same plane that gets laid over and they smash, and then it ends up Jamie being Emily's boss, and it just it was boring. I felt no chemistry. I just did not like it. There was nothing fun about this. There was nothing. So then we have Make It Sweet, and I gave this 4 stars. I really liked this. This is about Emma and Lucian, and in the beginning of the book, Emma gets killed off of she's an actress, and she gets killed off of her show, and so she goes and stays at this bed and breakfast that Lucian's aunt runs, where he is staying, and they have a romance. Lucian is incredibly sweet. He is a baker, and their relationship is just so cute. They start off as friends, and it escalates from there, and he bakes her little sweets and leaves them at her door, and she doesn't know it's him, and he finds out all of her favorite foods, and it's just a very cute, sweet romance, and I absolutely adored it. Then we have Gifting Me to His Best Friend, which is a 4-star read for me. This is the second or third book in the Touch of Taboo series, and this one is set around Christmas time, and it follows a married couple with the husband's best friend. The husband's best friend and the wife have kind of been circling each other for a while, and there also seems to be tension between the best friend and the husband, and so for this holiday season they decide to play some scenes out with each other, and I really like this. Of course, this whole series is very hot. I don't really like, I didn't like this as much as the other two, just because there is some voyeurism, but there's not really much else going on. It's kind of just like smashing. So then we have Savage Lover. This is a book in the Brutal Birthright series, and I gave this 3 stars. You'll see that every book that I read in the Brutal Birthright series this month, I really just like over since I started reading them, since the first one, has been 3 stars. I just feel like the series just doesn't deliver what I want them to, but this one is about Nero and Camille. I will say I probably like this one the most, just because it's about cars and all of that, and that's like, I grew up around cars, so that was a nice experience seeing them go to racetracks and things like that. But this is basically about Nero, who is the Ada's family. He's like Ada's brother, I think, and he is the youngest, and he is kind of known to be like the reckless and impulsive one. And in the beginning of the book, Camille goes to this party that her brother is at, her half-brother, and she finds out, first of all, she sees Nero there, and they knew each other in high school. They went to the same high school, but they never really associated with each other. And like his group of friends really bullied her in school, so she's never really like had a connection with him, a friendship with him. And then she goes to this party, and she drags her brother away from this party, and they get pulled over by a cop who finds drugs in her brother's backpack, and she takes the blame for it. And the cop lets them go, and then the next day comes and basically says, I won't arrest you or your brother if you will kind of be a spy for me. And then Nero is attempting to rob a bank to like bring some money into the family, and they start off as friends, and it grows from there. It's definitely one of those romances where like the hero doesn't really find the heroine attractive until he like gets to know her, and he quickly becomes like enamored with her. Again, 3 stars. I don't think it was anything really spectacular. Their romance wasn't like blow me out of the water great, but I did like the action and the car scene. So then we have Born Darkly, which is the second book in the Born Madly duet. I gave this 3 stars. I will say this was a pretty disappointing conclusion to this duet. This is about Grayson and London, and London was Grayson's therapist in the first one, and he kind of corrupts her, and they go on the run together. He is a serial killer that she was supposed to be rehabilitating, and obviously they have a romance. And this just, they were separated for the majority of this book, and it was just more focused on like the thrillery aspects than the romance, and it was just a little bit disappointing to me. So then we have I Think I Might Want You. I gave this 3 stars. This is about Gemma and Levi, and they are both wanderers. They love to travel. They love to stay in random places. Gemma is a writer of like travel books, and Levi is an artist, and they end up meeting up one day and having a one-night stand, and then they come back together at like a friend's barbecue. And it's a very short novella. It was good. I liked the kind of unconventional ending, and this series altogether are just good novellas. Then I read Separation, which is the second book in the Degradation series. I think it's called the Kane trilogy, and this is about Jameson and Tatum. And in the first one, Tatum becomes Jameson's like live-in escort, and they have like a very bully-esque grading sex life, and of course the romance goes from there. I gave this second one 2 stars. Very, very, very disappointed. I loved the first one. The first one was sexy and entertaining and angsty and dramatic, and the second one was just boring. The heroine felt very childish. The hero was doing a fantastic job. This is basically all about him groveling for something that he did in the first one, and the heroine just kept bringing up the same arguments over and over and over again. He would dispute or apologize for something that she brings up in an argument, and then she would just bring it up again in the next argument. Just very childish and very annoying, and it just made me not want to continue this series. I read Lady Sophia's Lover. This is the second book in the Bow Street Runners series, and this is about Sophia and Ross. And in the beginning of the book, Sophia goes to Ross, who is the like leader of the Bow Street Runners. They're like basically contracted cops. She tries to get a secretary job with the intention of like getting revenge on him because he did something to her brother. And I gave this 3 stars. I like their relationship, but overall this was like not my favorite. I find with Lisa Kleypas, her books are kind of just okay, or they're really, really good. And this was just like an okay one. I thought the plot was boring. I thought that Sophia's like thirst for revenge wasn't as strong, and it quickly like went out the window when she found out that Ross could make her panties moist. So I read the last book in the Bow Street Runners series called Worth Any Price, and I loved this one. I gave it 4 stars. This is about Nick and Charlotte, and Nick was someone that we were seeing throughout the first 2 books. He was known as this Robin Hood character who would simultaneously not do great things. He would set up people to do crimes, and then he would take them in, like turn them in for the bounty. And then he ends up being recruited by the Bow Street Runners in the second book. And then in this one, he is tasked with going to pick up Charlotte, who is has run away from this man that she's been betrothed to basically her entire life, and he's extremely disgusting, creepy. He assaults her when she's a child. He controls what she eats, who she sees, how she dresses, just a very gross man. And so he's tasked with taking her back to her family so that she can be with this guy. And he immediately becomes obsessed with her, and he decides that he's going to offer her a marriage of convenience to get her out of the deal with the guy. And it was just chef's kiss. Love Nick, love their relationship, love how obsessed he is. I then read Wild Rain, and I gave this 3 stars. This is about Garrett and Spring, and in the beginning of the book, Garrett is a journalist for a Black newspaper, and he goes to Paradise, which is the county in this series, and he stays with Spring after an accident that injures him, and he quickly finds out that Spring is not like other women, and she's strong and she's independent and she can hunt and she knows how to shoot a gun, and he likes her. I do with most Beverly Jenkins. I gave this 3 stars. She's very much a comfy, cozy author. Her angst and her romances never last very long. They often get together like halfway through the book, and then it's the external conflicts that you are dealing with, and that was the case here. I then read Twisted Games. This is the second book in the Twisted series, and this is about Reese and Bridget. Bridget is a friend of the girl from the first one, and she is the Princess of Andorra, and her bodyguard is Reese. And in the beginning of the book, Bridget has had this long-standing bodyguard who ends up having to retire and leave her, and so Reese comes in and is her bodyguard, and he's very strict, very demanding of her, but he's also really sweet. And this spans, I think, 3 years, and she ends up finding out that her brother is planning to abdicate the throne to her, so she is forced to become queen once her grandfather passes away. And I gave this 3 stars. I think reading the first book and this book, I just have to admit to myself that Anna Huang is not for me. I think I just don't vibe with the way that she plots her books. I like her romances. I love their relationships, but her plots are just too much for me. They do too much, and they're not for me. So then we have Broaddrick, which is the second book in the Sabine Valley series. I couldn't even begin to explain the plot of this series to you, but think of it as like mafia families fighting, and then whoever wins the fight takes brides, and it forces peace among the factions for a year. And this is Broaddrick, who is Kane's brother. Kane was the first book. And this is Broaddrick, Shiloh, and Monroe. I gave this 3 stars. In typical Katie Roberts fashion, it is sexy, but it emphasized the fact that there is no really well thought out plot or described world building by the fact that this was very slow. The first one I gave 3 or 4 stars, but it's sexy. They're going at it the whole time. There's a lot of aggression and anger there, and it's all about revenge and revenge sex and hate sex, and so it's a little bit more masked that the world isn't as thought out. And because this one is so slow, it's very obvious that we are missing a lot of pieces of the puzzle for this. So then I read Air. This is the second book in the Bloodline Vampire series, and this follows Malachi, Wolf, Rylan, and Mina. And in the first book, Mina is a half human, half vampire that gets sent to Malachi as like a feeder and breeder, and their romance goes from there. And then you eventually add in Wolf and Rylan, Wolf, and Malachi are bloodline vampires, and they all have their own powers. And in the second one, they are plotting and running from Mina's father because there's something about her that he wants. And I gave this 4 stars. This is a very unpopular opinion, but I liked this more than the first one. Granted, I think if this had been the first one, I wouldn't have liked it as much, because I think this was a good bridge book to what we're gonna get in the third one, if I had to guess. But this was much more focused on their relationships and them together, that I liked a lot more than I did the first one. Then I finished out the Serpent and Dove series by reading Gods and Monsters. I can't really give you like a full synopsis of what this specific book is, obviously, because it's a conclusion, but this is basically a witch and a witch hunter who have to get married. Obviously it becomes more than that, but it's about Lou, who is the witch, and Reed, who is the witch hunter, and I gave this one 4 stars. I adored the second one in the series, which was like an incredibly unpopular opinion. Most people did not like it, but the things that people didn't like about the second one carried over into this one. And I think I didn't like it in this one because I felt like those things had already been wrapped up and already been done. And so in this one, I wanted everyone to be together, doing their thing together, fighting the villain together. And so about 50% of the book was stuff that I feel like we already wrapped up in the second one. And so I ended up giving out a 4 star, but overall I think this series is fantastic. This being a debut series speaks to Shelby Mahurin's ability, and I will most definitely be picking up things that she writes in the future. And then I read another disappointing read of the year, and that is Trouble at Brexia High. This is the second book in the Brexia High series. I adored the first one when I read it. It is this very goofy, campy, dramatic high school bully romance about Raven and Maddox. And Raven is like this kind of orphan girl who is forced into a foster home, and she goes to the foster home that is attached. She goes to the high school that is attached to the foster home, and the high school is run by like the kings of Brexia. So like Maddox, his brother Captain, and like they have another brother that I can't remember the name of. And they immediately try to like take Raven down to task, and she's having none of it. And they, of course, are enchanted by that. I gave this 2 stars. This was overwhelmingly bad. Like the first one was fun and ridiculous and over dramatic, and just something that you read if you want to have fun. And this one was just overwhelmingly bad. I don't know what was missing, what spark was missing. I don't know if I just read the first one at the right time or I read this one at the wrong time. I don't know, but it just did not work for me. So then we have Bloody Heart, and this is about Dante and Simone. This is a book in the Fertile Birthright series. Again, I gave this 3 stars. This is a second chance romance. Dante and Simone were together in the, like when they were young adults. Dante, I think, was like 21. Simone was like 18 or 19. Politician girl, mafia boy situation. Their families don't want them to be together, and then something happens and they end up breaking up, and they come back together 7 years later. I cannot speak to how everybody is going to enjoy or not enjoy this series or this book, because this has quite literally every single trope that I hate in romance. So obviously my opinions are going to be skewed or biased towards like not liking it. So I gave it 3 stars just like out of fairness for the book. So next up, I read the second highlight of the month, and that is Devil in Spring. This is the 3rd book in the Ravenel series, and it was just 5-star perfection. It is about Pandora and Gabriel, and Pandora was always the twin that was the wallflower, didn't want to be married, very intelligent. She wants to run her own business, which obviously you didn't do in that time. And she ends up getting compromised by Gabriel on accident in the beginning of the book. And so both families say, we're not going to force you to marry her or him respectively, but give it a shot. So Gabriel, the St. Vincent family invites the Ravenel family to their country estate, and they spend like a couple of months together. I freaking loved this. This is a prime example of how you have an HEA with a strong and stubborn heroine without losing any of her agency. This is a perfect example of compromise, beautiful communication, and a partnership. And I'm emphasizing this because a book that I'm going to talk about later on did it all wrong. Pandora is given so much agency from her family and from Gabriel and from Gabriel's family, and that's what I loved so much about this. That's what I found so beautiful, because Gabriel and everybody in her life understands that she has always felt this immense pressure by society to be this woman that she is not, and so she has been given the opportunity to decide what she wants out of life. Gabriel will give her any and everything that she wants. She will change their marriage vows. He will find any legal loophole possible for her to have everything that she wants. Their relationship is truly so beautiful. Like, if I was going to make a list of all the beautiful relationships and romance that I've read so far, they would probably be in the top 3. Like, just perfection. And then the book that did it wrong was Broken Vow. This is the 4th book in the Fertile Birthright series, and this is about Riona and Ryland. And I think that this is exactly, it's a very similar plot, obviously with like some mafia elements in. Riona is very headstrong, very driven, very ambitious, and Ryland is this like country boy rancher from Tennessee who served in the military, who is now her bodyguard, and all of her agency was stripped away. Every single bit of it. It just like, between one page and the next, she became a completely different character. She sacrificed everything to be with Ryland, and I couldn't stand it. It ruined the whole book for me. I did give it 3 stars. All 3 of those stars were for Ryland. I think he was exactly what Gabriel was. He was understanding, he was communicative, he wanted to give her everything that she wanted, and for some reason, the author felt like she couldn't give them an HEA without having her sacrifice all of her ambition, and it just like really hurt my heart. This is an author that I never thought this would be an issue with. I'm not blaming her. Like, she has every right to write her stories how she wants, and this is by no means me like banging on that she's a bad author or anything like that. I think she's a fantastic author. I just don't know her mindset with this one, and I'm disappointed. So then I read Grin Bearded, and this is a actress and park ranger story. It's part of the Winston Brothers series, and I really enjoyed it. These are just like small town romances. In the beginning of the book, Sienna, the actress, is going to the small town where Jethro lives and the Winston Brothers like books take place, and she ends up breaking down, and Jethro finds her, and she lies about who she is and why she's there. I really liked this. I liked this series as a whole. They're just good, charming, small town romances. They're a fun listen. I will say that as the book goes on, Sienna kind of gets a little bit annoying, and I didn't really like the conflict, but I'm definitely interested in continuing on. And then the last thing that I read in December was The Doctor. I gave this 3 stars. This was a very... It was disappointing. It's about Greg and Cassidy, and it is a ex-boyfriend's father romance, and I think the large glaring issue of it for me is that they have an early hookup, and like that just ruins a romance for me. I think it pops all of the tension. I'm not gonna go too into detail, but I'll just say it was a disappointing read, and I wish that it had been done a little bit differently. Also, I'm never going to believe that you have a daddy character named Greg. So those are all of the books that I have read in December. Leave your comments down below on any of the books that I talked about or anything that you read in December. I would love to know. Please consider subscribing if you want to see more videos from me, especially end of the year content is coming up very soon. I will catch you guys in my next one. Thanks so much for watching. Sitting in silence, we still feel the vibe of you.
you could not say a word, and I know what you just decided. We'd be right in the same wave. Oh, the water's perfect.